What if I could prove to you that the engines that power cars, boats, trains, planes, and even lawn mowers all started from this thing? Cars. They're quintessential tools of transportation for an estimated 18% of the world and 91.7% of Americans, which make up 86.3% of Tire Fire's audience at the time of writing this. They have Bluetooth, CarPlay, and there's been a bunch of examples of crazy technology in cars for decades, but let's take a step back and break down a combustion engine. Gasoline explodes in precision-designed holes in a block of metal, the force of which drives pistons like hammerheads. Connecting rods bind the pistons to the crankshaft, and these explosions happen hundreds of times per minute at idle, thousands when you're driving it. And each one of them is precisely timed, happening under conditions just perfect enough to produce enough power to keep itself sustaining constant rotation. Figuring this out, engine nerds designed mechanisms using their understandings of physics to filter this rotational energy through a transmission to vary the output shaft speed, and designed a differential to pivot the rotational force into a usable direction. But lots of people know all this. How the hell did we get to this point? Who designed the first engine and what could it do? Well, Greeks and Romans can duke it out, as Roman architechnician Vitruvius described it first, but Greek engine nerd Hero of Alexandria described it better, and history only wants to remember the best. So the first engine was called the Eleopile? So it was just difficult enough to pronounce where people said, f it, but surely it did something useful. Spun. It spun. It fun. But ultimately, nothing more than a proof of concept that steam can generate thrust. The engine is a ball with tubes stuck in it that pumps steam into it from a sealed pot of boiling water beneath it, until it spews out some dinky little elbows in the ball and spins it. So again, that's real neat and all, but not comprehensibly applicable to any facet of daily life, other than babysitting before we had iPads. Naysaying nerds may say, but Blasco de Garay, and to that I'd say is full of shit, and the Spanish authority said so too, so suck it. Meanwhile, sometime over the next 400 years, year 100 to 500 CE for reference, someone on a southeastern Asian island, or mainland China, said, hold my beer, their shit's inefficient as heck, yo, I'ma do 'em one better, and invents the Fire Piston. Then tells all his buddies in the neighboring territories to form the Fire Coalition of Flex, where they assert their dominant fire-making skills on the world to leave them wondering. How in the frickin' frick did they invent a means of compression to induce combustion using bamboo? And the answer was, using bamboo. Except Europe didn't find out about them until an Italian accidentally discovered the same principles testing something else, which sounds very Italian of him. Europe said LOL, okay Italy, and didn't investigate it further until a Frenchman made the exact same mistake cleaning out air guns in 1802. The point of all this is to highlight the importance of communication and collaboration, on any scale. But I digress. A fire piston is simply a tube which you load with tinder, sealed with either packed wet string or greased rubber seals on modern variants. You toss in your tinder, slam down a ramrod with the seal on it, and make a baffling 25:1 compression ratio, superheating the wood stuck at the end to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, its auto-ignition point, or where it bursts into flames. Honestly, more surprised I don't see BattleBox talking about these or pushing one on their store. Brandon, if you make $1 million off that, just give us a shout out! Man's obsession with compression and the power of combustion translated into cannons and guns in the following centuries, and as the over-evolved Australopiths invented boomsticks for sport, for war, and for fun, they accidentally discovered rocket propulsion, while searching for, and I ye not son, the elixir of life for the emperor of 9th century China. And the engineering Emmy goes to the Xingmi family! They invented the fire arrow, which is a nice way of saying put the accidental black powder they invented on an arrow and full sent it. Turns out it actually generates measurable thrust to where it can legitimately be called a rocket arrow. Given that this invention was pigeonholed into weaponry, which is not the topic of this video, we proceeded onwards through time until nerds started playing with steam again, which is as interesting as much as it isn't. They were a great means to an end for doing manual labor for longer than humans, hopefully as efficiently, or doing something humans couldn't, like to produce vacuum, for as long as the steam pump can do it without complaining. It's the 17th century. Those of us that survived the plague don't have any time left for your shit, Jeremy. Oh, where the pump lever crushed me arm. So steam engines replaced Jeremy's everywhere, and if you're interested in steam engines, you should look into them because we got all we needed to here. Pistons were developed and had a home inside a honed cylinder, which was also invented just before the turn of the 18th century in 1698 by Thomas Savery. And past petrolheads took those principles from there and ran with it for almost 100 years, until John Barber patented a gas turbine design in 1791, Thomas Mead patented a gas engine, and Robert Street designed the first liquid petroleum engine in the same year. And an American named John Stevens designed the same thing in America in 1798, so good job, America. You finally got one on the board. Then to be stupid, the Niepce brothers stepped in Altien Marbert in 1807 and built an engine that ran on dust, somehow, made from coal dust, some type of resin, and moss, of all things. And unlike most other things, this worked exactly like you imagined it did in Falling Sand, or its cooler older brother game, Dust. Violently. Here's a recent picture of a dust explosion from an Oregon sugar plant in 2008. Which is why we dropped those hotkeys. The Niepce brothers separated, and one of them suffered from mental illness, while the other went on to revolutionize the photography industry of all things, with the first permanent-length photographs being made by his inventions, which worked off of his findings from the Pirellophore. Pirellophore? Fucking French. But then some Swiss engineer, Francois-Isaac de Rivaz, or French Isaac, takes the wildcard slot on the roster that same year, 1807, and builds an engine that uses hydrogen, plus another Italian spark-type ignition from 1780, cobble it onto a four-wheeled carriage and accidentally creates the world's first technically considered an internal combustion engine automobile in 1808. Sigmund Freud states there are no mistakes, but omniscient truth seer Bob Ross adds to that, just happy little accidents. I think the reality of these inventions lies somewhere in between those two quotes. From here, it's a battle of nerds across the Atlantic. American Samuel Murray, 1826, first engine patent including a rudimentary carburetor which mixes non-combustible liquid fuel with air to make it a highly volatile gaseous mist. We would use these for the foreseeable future, still using small carburetors today as the most common and relatively efficient fuel delivery methods for smaller than a car consumer landscaping equipment. 1833, U.S. nerd Lemmy Wright out of New Hampshire patents the first gas engine to incorporate water cooling jackets into the cylinder walls. Germany takes over for quite a few years from here, with two players at the forefront. Nicholas Otto for the early years, with help from famous and powerful friends, and Karl Benz picks up where Otto leaves off, also with help from famous and powerful friends. Nicky Boy Otto rocked the motherland with a slew of innovative new engine designs, such as the first internal combustion engine, and the Otto Silent engine, which is a lot closer to a modern engine than it may appear at first. A man known as the king of designers among auto manufacturers at the time, Wilhelm Maybach, ever heard of him? Thought the same thing, and helped Otto turn it into a production engine, which made a blistering 2.95 horsepower. Sick, dude. 1879 brings in the two-stroke, and 2 years later a Scotsman's already built the world's first supercharger for it. Lovely. Attaboy, Dougal. Dougal? In 1885, Benz invents the world's first automobile, which we all know is a lie at this point. Even Germans were like, we have one of Siegfried's petrol carts, yeah, but this is very good. Rudolf Diesel enters the chat in 1892, shows the world his motor 5 years later, and blows the world away to where they forgot Karl Benz designed the world's first flat or boxer engine, where the internal combustion engine's pistons go sideways. A feature about as notable as most Karls, to be fair. Also, to be fair, this dude Robert Bosch, ever heard of him? Adapted an ignition magneto to a motor vehicle engine and kinda changed the game too that same year. The gay 90s were skits, yo, no cap. Mr. Bosch would become Mr. Benz's friend, and history sure didn't forget them. Also, a few years earlier in 1893, in America, the Duryea brothers built their first car, then their second a year later. And by golly, the fair denizens of Springfield, Massachusetts liked them so much, they wanted ones of their own. So in 1895, America entered the gasoline automobile game. While the Duryea brothers, Chuck and Frank, were assembling their cars and getting a business off the ground, Carl Benz was designing the double-pivot steering assemblies would only make minor improvements upon for the next 130 years till today, with the addition of hydraulically and electrically assisted steering. Oh, yeah, and he invented the planetary gear set, still known even today for its durable reliability, if nothing else. If you were wondering where the stereotypes of Germans and engineering came from, the World Wars, but also these frickin' gearheads and car nerds in the later 19th century, yo, they were going off. But even with all this innovation, some would say that it all pales in comparison to what the turn of the 20th century brought on a global scale. All that and more next time on Car Nerd Z.
Hey, how we doing tonight? Listen, my name's Colin, and I worked really hard on this video. If you like it, drop a like down below. If you think your friends would like it, feel free to share with them. And if you like cars, if you like builds, if you like comedy, skits, slice of life, gaming, drop a sub down below. We're all about following our passions on this channel, and we just do the stuff that we like. So if you like what we do, follow along. Could be fun. Let's see where we all end up. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great one.